Hi, everybody, and welcome back to New Majority. My name is Isabel, and today is April 24th, 2025. And I first want to start off with saying happy belated Easter to all those Christians and Catholics out there. And I also want to start off with my condolences to all those affected by Pope Francis's death. Pope Francis led the church for over 10 years and was the first non European pope in over a century and the first pope to ever come from the Americas. He led a life dedicated to justice and, promoting both those that were marginalized in society and also forgotten. He truly was a pope of the people. I think that's how he would have liked to have been remembered, and that's truly how he lived his life. The conclave is happening soon, so it'll be interesting to see who it is that will take his place. And for the news segment of this podcast, I first want to start off with everybody closing their eyes. So imagine that you're in fourth or sixth grade, maybe even younger than that. You're sitting with yourself in a classroom with other students, small desks, colorful walls, and you can hear the projector. And then all of a sudden, over the loudspeaker, you hear lockdown drill. And immediately, the first thing you do is turn out the lights, or somebody's designated to turn out the lights. You lock the doors, and all of a sudden, you're huddled in the middle of the classroom. You hear footsteps all over the hallway and people checking to see if they can break into the classroom. You're told to just be quiet, as quiet as you can. And you don't exactly know how to process this yet. You might not even be 10 years old, but it settles in your chest like it's something you should have known how to carry. So now open your eyes and ask yourself, how old are you now? Because for many of us, especially Gen Z, these drills didn't stop when we were in elementary school. They followed us in middle school, in high school, and now in college. Take the recent tragedy that just happened at Florida State University, for example, where one of the students had actually been a victim of the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting that happened in 2019 and was now again the victim of another shooting at the Florida State University campus. Can you imagine that? Once as a child and another time as a college student. And so these school shootings aren't just singular events anymore. It's just a cycle. We're in a cycle of school shootings. We're in a cycle of mass tragedies. So we're told to rehearse for this violence, right? Hide in a classroom or know where the nearest exit is. But we're not teaching people to not go into these innocent spaces and kill people. Politicians tell us that they're doing the best that they can, that we're in their thoughts and prayers. Community members will say the same thing, but people are still dying at the end of the day. And when it comes to gun violence, we also need to talk about the disparity of gun violence because gun violence disproportionately also affects Black and Brown men and Indigenous women who are more likely to die from firearms domestic violence. And so, in many low income areas, gun violence, unfortunately, is not just a headline, it's a daily reality. And it's really important for us to one, not become desensitized to these types of issues, and two, pay attention when it happens, and three, hold their politicians accountable. Unfortunately, the only people that can make sure that this issue is resolved are those in Congress, those in the state Senate, those that are in some type of political power, because they're the ones that set the laws, regulations for all of us. And while we're talking about safety, let's zoom out for a second. Because safety is not just about dodging bullets. It's also about avoiding asthma, smoke, and billion-dollar power plants in poor communities. And so I live here in Richmond, Virginia, and coming soon, unfortunately, to Chester County, Virginia, unless we do something about it, Dominion Energy is trying to build a massive 944 megawatt gas-fired power plant right on the site of an old coal plant that polluted the area for over 80 years. And this isn't just a local issue, it's a blueprint for environmental racism. The proposed plant would dump 2 million tons of carbon emissions a year, more than the coal plant did before. And guess who's footing the bill? Not the corporations, not the data centers driving up demand, but us, the ratepayers, everyday Virginians. Residential customers are expected to pay 50%, while data centers are expected to pay only 11%. And this plant is being forced on majority low income, majority people of color area. And so they've lived through decades of toxic exposure and now they're being asked to endure more. This is about environmental justice. It's about health. It's about the right to breathe clean air and not need an inhaler or other assistance to breathe. And it's also about resistance. A group called Friends of Chesterfield has delayed the project. They've been able to gather community members, host events, and brought statewide attention to this injustice. And just like we have to rally against gun violence, we also need to rally against climate violence. Because at the end of the day, this is all part of the same system, one that puts profit over people and ones that see certain lives more expandable than others. And so it's up to us to make sure that this system gets dismantled. So again, we are not powerless. Whether it's demanding gun reform or fighting new fossil fuel plants, our voices matter. So in this episode, we're going to break it all down from the trauma we carry in our bodies to the pollution we carry in our lungs, and more importantly, what we can do to make sure that we change this injustice. Today, I'm joined by someone who brings their heart, debt, and deep commitment to justice in every single space that they enter. She is a graduating senior at the University of Richmond, majoring in sociology with the double minor in geography and anthropology. She's passionate about all things human rights, with a special focus on educational access and climate justice, especially for communities that have been forgotten or left behind. In a world that can feel isolating and cold, she centers around community. They believe in the power of connection, mutual care, and being there for one another, even when the systems around us fall short. Today, we're diving into climate justice in Puerto Rico, what it means, who's being impacted, and the colonial legacy behind it. She brings not only a sharp analysis and firsthand experience, having traveled to Puerto Rico last summer, but also heart to this conversation. And I'm so excited to share this stage with her. Please stay tuned for my very special guest. I'm so excited to share with you guys. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to A New Majority. I have here with me Rosie.
Hi.
Rosie, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm really good. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm a senior right now at UR, and I'm studying sociology.
Nice.
Hmm.
So, you're part of the Climate Justice for Puerto Rico.
Yes, I am.
And so, what inspired you to one get involved with climate justice, and why specifically this project?
Hmm. I think definitely. So I'm a sociology major, as I just mentioned, and a lot of that is really looking at inequalities that people go through.
Mhm,
And, for me, I stuck with that for a while. Like I was like, yeah, this is awesome, but I don't know what to do with this.
mhm.
And then I started taking more like environmental classes and learning about that. And through there I learned about this research opportunity where we could like see what's going on in other places around the world, specifically for this project Puerto Rico. What are the people going through environmentally, and that aligns a lot with my beliefs and what I want to work towards, so yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So, do you have any personal or cultural ties to Puerto
Mm,
Rico?
Not personally, I mean, back where I live, we have like a large Latinx community, and part of that is Puerto Rican people. Like,
Mhm.
that community is large in a lot of places that you go. So, even though it's not like personal ties to me, I'm surrounded.
Yeah, cultural.
Yeah, culturally, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, where's back home for you?
New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey, baby.
Oh, wow. I'm
Hmm.
from New Jersey too.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
that's
from Jersey
awesome.
City though.
Oh,
So
got you,
yeah,
got you.
a little far, but a little close too.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, so you get it. There's a very large Puerto Rican
yeah,
population
yeah, of
in
course.
Philly, especially. And I know like during the last election season, that was like a when they made that comment about Puerto Rico being a floating pile of garbage. Um, that was supposed to impact the Latino vote there.
Yeah,
I don't know if it actually did.
right.
But for those who haven't heard about it, can you
Mm,
describe what the Climate Justice for Puerto Rico project is
yeah,
and
yeah.
what is the goal?
Yeah, so this project really centers around basically colonialism, white colonialism, and the way that affects just climate justice in general. Right now in Puerto Rico, what's happening is that a lot of the people there are suffering because of the extraction of their oil, or of their soil, I mean. So they are affected a lot through health issues, through health concerns, because of the air quality, air pollution, that a lot of these large American corporations are kind of leaving on them. So for us, it's really focusing on that like extraction of a vulnerable community that can't do much about it. They kind of just have to rely on activists and on people to share their story, because otherwise, like, you don't hear about this happening.
Yeah, thank you so
Hmm.
much. And for those who might not know what colonialism is,
Yeah,
can you explain
yeah.
what that is?
Yeah, so colonialism is the idea that you have a powerful group. I mean, let's not lie. We know that that is white power. That's white people. That is the United States of America primarily. Um, and that's basically the extraction of resources. They're taking from other cultures that may not have as much power, and basically over dominating that culture. And example really for Puerto Rico is how they are part of a US territory, yet they cannot vote. Puerto Ricans cannot vote as citizens. So then the question is, what makes a citizen out of Puerto Ricans? Like, what are they then in that case? Because it feels like really it's just like the United States kind of like the puppet master, really taking control of their decisions, and the people having no voice at all.
Mm,
So at least from my perspective, that's how I see colonialism in Puerto Rico.
yeah, excuse me, interesting.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if you know this, but do other territories vote too in the United States elections?
I would assume so, but I would fact check that first.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that.
yeah,
So what role did students, or what role would you say students play in shaping this initiative? And was it more like grassroots or
yeah,
more guided by
yeah.
faculty?
I would definitely say it's student led. The faculty. I mean, shout out to our faculty that works with us primarily. So that's Patricia,
Mm,
Alicia,
yeah.
MFB, Mary Finley Brooke, and Mariela. And these are like awesome. It's woman led,
Hmm.
and that I feel like it's not something you see that often.
Yeah, especially in research projects.
Exactly, in research projects, they're such powerful people, and I think they definitely helped us like pave the way. Like, kind of, they come with a lot of knowledge, prior knowledge, and for a lot of us coming into this project, we don't know much about what's happening in Puerto Rico. That's the purpose of the project. But after they kind of guided us through that, we took a lot of that initiative to be creative in that sense, and with what we learn about what's happening. And I think they leave a lot to us, which at first was kind of stressful and a little bit like scary, because I'm
Yeah.
like, we have to like present something, at the ANS symposium, or we have to do this and that. And for me, I was like, I don't know what we're gonna do. But it truly, because they've let us have a lot of like autonomy within that, like the students, like, I feel like we've created a lot of beautiful things.
Yeah, and I'll link some resources to the Climate Justice for Puerto Rico page here at the University of Richmond. But I remember the documentary that you shared, and
Yes.
that was so powerful.
Yeah.
Like I know it's not done yet, and maybe by the time this episode's released, like it might not be done yet, but maybe it'll be done in the near future.
Yeah.
But I just remember like hearing the music and learning even how things like music can be
Mm.
symbols of resistance.
Mhm.
Because I know like here in the United States, there's this band. I don't remember the name of the band, but there's a song. It's called La Bamba Rebelde,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that song that do you know what the name of the song was that was playing in the Puerto
I
Rican
in Indigna
Indigna something?
something. Yeah,
I'll find
yeah.
I'll find it out and put it in
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
description. But I remember just listening to that and reminding me like, wow, because even there's a lot of songs in Latin American culture where people are singing about like the AIDS epidemic or singing about
Mhm.
like leaving their family
Mhm.
behind. And it's like just really powerful seeing how these methods are like,
Yeah.
constantly reused to show resistance and
100%.
storytelling essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what forms of art or
Yeah, yeah,
storytelling would
yeah.
you say were used in this project?
Oh my gosh, I think connecting it back to like our faculty leaders, we have the privilege of being able to work with some of the most creative, faculty members.
Yeah.
They are, Alicia, for example, she kind of expresses herself in dance and movement. And we had a lot of that. We had a lot of like taking time to stop and having these like breathing exercises,
Mm.
or like, like singing something if it like comes to us, or just a movement or something. And I think that helped. essentially with what we're doing now. A lot of, like, when you were there at the event, you saw some of, like, the poster, like, the images that some of the students reproduced. Like, they drew things, they
Yeah,
created
very powerful.
collages,
Mhm.
all these things that, in my opinion, is more accessible sometimes than reading like these dense,
Yeah,
long
yeah.
articles that, for some people, they might not be appealed to that. And
Yeah, of
I
course.
think that's for sure, like, something that we were aware of, is that, like, how are we going to make something, reproduce something that will get to more voices? And
Yeah.
I think, the documentary as well, that is something that I'm working on, with the group of some a smaller group of students. And that's something that we want to make sure that people can, like, watch and take something really powerful out of. Hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think it's really important that you mentioned the student led part of this and then also the faculty part of this and trying to improve accessibility because, some people don't speak English. And of
Hmm.
course, because this is like a collaborative effort with people in
Hmm.
uh, Puerto Rico, I think it's really important to have like collages and pictures because you don't need to know the language to understand what the artist is trying to portray. And
Exactly.
art is so subjective too. So yeah, that's really great, especially again, like, I can't wait for you guys to release a documentary
Yeah.
because, like, again, it was just so amazing. And, we talked a little bit about colonialism. And so, what way does the project highlight the connection between colonialism and the climate vulnerability in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, yeah. So, a big part of that was actually going to Puerto Rico and talking to the people
Hmm.
and hearing it from them themselves. Is that they are telling us that, look at this coal company, and I'll talk a bit about it more later, but AES, the Applied Energy Service, I don't know, right? But it's this energy company that basically, they've kind of, like, dominated a lot of the lands in Puerto Rico. For example, in Guayama, Puerto Rico, they have this coal factory building thing, um that, when I went, we saw it was, like, right next to a children's playground and that kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and that powerful, but so disheartening. And it's just, you see it there for yourself, how, like, how these, like, US ties are kind of, like, dominating cultures. And, for example, this isn't necessarily Puerto Rico, but I was abroad last semester in Chile. And,
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
it was awesome. But my friends and I went to Cajon de Maipo, and it was like you could see glaciers and mountains, and I thought it was beautiful. And we were driving around, and all of a sudden I see these huge pipes, and I'm like, I'm reading about it, and it says AES, and it's like, wow, this is not something just in Puerto Rico. You see this everywhere. And, I got a chance, like, that curiosity led me to talk to some of the locals there about it. And they're
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is something that's been bothering us for a while. We didn't even know it was in other places. And it's like, wow. So
Wow.
I think part of it is, like, you go to these communities, you go talk to these people, and then you start seeing how it correlates to all these other places.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, yeah, it's like, that is colonialism, that power. And you see that. And we especially learn that, in Puerto Rico. And
Yeah.
what a lot of the activists, the community members, anyone you talk to, like, what they told you about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting seeing how they kind of have a blueprint that's like being
Mm-hmm.
shared all around different
Mm-hmm.
places. And that's a little scary.
Very.
And I think one interesting thing that you're saying right now is how the residents are like, I hate this and I don't know why this is so here. I
Yeah.
think it's important also one
Yeah.
amazing thing that the project is doing is highlighting people's experiences and people's voices because even if the politicians and the people that are supposed to protect them aren't doing it, they still want to make sure that they know that their voice is still being heard. So
Yeah.
again, like thank you so much for doing this
Of
project. Really
course.
important.
Yeah.
And so what does climate justice mean to you? And how does it differ from just climate action?
Honestly, I think for me, this is centering people. Climate justice is, you're not only looking at, like, ecological and environmental factors, but you're looking at the people and how that affects them. I think, something I focus a lot in my studies is the difference between, like, environmental justice and, like, white environmentalism. The
Mm,
fact that with white environmentalism, they're so focused on, like, keeping, like, endangered species, like, bringing them back, or like trees and forests and all these things. And obviously that's super important, but where do you see the talk about the people that are being affected, the people of color, the
Mm.
marginalized communities that
Yeah.
are not on the front lines of these issues because
Yeah.
they're not being listened to, you know?
Mhm.
And I for me, it's like climate justice is going exactly where those people are and talking to them and uplifting their voices. Um I would say that's like the main difference, separation.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's super like what you're saying is super important and super
Yeah.
vital because I do think that when we think about climate action, and I think one of the the big contested thing was like the plastic straws and replacing it
Yeah.
with paper straws, and
Yeah.
people are like save the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
turtles. But people should protest or question these American companies that then go to these countries and then cause cancer for
Exactly.
the residents, or
Exactly.
it's even worse because there's so many long-term effects that we probably, or the residents there probably aren't going to see for a long time, and probably things that stick with them for generations. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
thank you for pointing that out. And so why is it important to center the Puerto Rican voices
Yeah.
and experiences when we talk about climate change?
Yeah, yeah. I think, especially in this country, and how we've already spoken about the fact that Puerto Rico is part of this country,
Hmm.
yet we don't treat the Puerto Rican people as such. We don't treat them as they are with us. You know, the way that we've heard politicians talking about them
Yeah.
as if they're like isolated and it's like, oh, we're going to take everything from you, but
Hmm.
we're still going to trash talk you. We're still going to like minimize your vulnerability. And I think that's exactly like why it's important to like bring them to the front lines of these issues is because they're actively going through this right now. Um and you know, I mean, you have like pop culture like Bad Bunny, for example. Like, he's done a lot to vocalize these issues, you know, like with like El Apagón, like that music video. You
Yeah.
watch that, you know, I shared that with my family. I'm like, watch this, you know, that was super accessible and it's super like awesome to see. So you see not only that like in the media, but now you're seeing like students do it, and you're seeing students actually go and talking to the people that live there. You know, we're producing like these materials, these projects, in hopes to like also contribute to that work that's already done. And yeah, I think that's why exactly it's important. And also the fact that the people have been welcoming. You know, when we went there, it was like for like a week, a little less than a week, and everyone was so friendly, you know,
Yeah.
despite the topics being very, very sad, unfortunate. It's like they're still very passionate and they're always happy to share, and they were so hospitable. Like,
Yeah.
they were just amazing, amazing people.
Yeah, I see you definitely had like a great
Oh
experience. And
yeah.
yeah, I definitely get that sense for myself even when I go to a lot of countries. I mean, I was in the Dominican Republic last summer and
Yeah.
everyone there was so nice.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that the Puerto Rico being a floating pile of garbage
Yeah.
was a comedian that said that at a Trump rally.
Oh,
It
okay.
wasn't Trump
Okay.
himself,
Okay.
but still that rhetoric would be supported
Yeah.
and given a platform at a rally in New York City,
Yes.
where there's a huge Puerto Rican population. I
Yes.
think still signifies some type of, well, definitely prejudice, racism, and um general just like dislike towards Latinos, which is not surprising right now, unfortunately. So what would you say is one of the most interesting things you've, or one of the most interesting, or one of the most shocking things you've learned since
Mm.
starting this project?
Hmm. I guess for me, it's the connection that some of these energy companies have to the university. Um,
Hmm.
so AES, for example, has ties with the university. Like, they provide a lot of like their energy, and the university currently is working on Spider Solar. So like, you know, having some of that like renewable energy. And what's a bit problematic about that is the fact that, well, they're working with AES, who, you know, as we've talked about, is causing all this harm not only to Puerto Rico but other countries. And the fact that I think it was like the Princeton Review, or yeah, I think it was the Princeton Review, and they were like, University of Richmond is like top 50 sustainable campuses, and they were like number 25 or something. And I think that just like was kind of upsetting because it's like it looks at sustainability from such a like one dimensional sort of perspective. It's like, oh look, like they're doing good with their recycling, like they're doing this, like Spider Solar, wow.
Yeah.
Um but they're not addressing like the issues that are going on in these countries. Like, we're not like, I don't know, like the school isn't taking accountability for what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like what really mostly has surprised me is like that, even though we got to go on this trip, it was funded by the very institution that is helping,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. And I'm glad that you're bringing this up because even though I think it's great that the university is able to sponsor you guys to go to Puerto Rico, it's also important to kind of also point out, I guess, the hypocrisy and I
Yeah.
guess problematic affiliation.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things I learned from the documentary was that even like when the government tries to hold AES accountable, they just get away without paying a fine or
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
get away with
That's right.
doing whatever they want if they
That's right.
pay for a politician. But I think one of the most surprising things I remember from the documentary was that the government had paid for the fine or something like
Mhm.
that, and so the
Yeah. Oh,
people's
yeah, that's
taxes
right.
went towards paying the fine rather than the company itself. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it seems like these giant companies just kinda get away with doing whatever
Oh,
they want and,
100%.
like, no pushback.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to that point also, like, the fact that AES has been able to, like, for example, at that event, I mentioned also how they have gone to, like, the Dominican Republic. They've dumped all of this coal ash, and it's caused, like, birth defects
Yeah.
and, like, mortality rates, like, up, and, the fact that they were able to get away with that, even though they kind of got like a slap on the wrist type of thing. It's like, you can't do this, but like we'll let you go type of thing, or like commercializing their coal ash and turning into agrimax, which is supposed to be used to like create these infrastructures, right? And it's so common that it's like everywhere you go, by the beaches, by it's building your homes type of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
It is, and again, really appreciate just, like, having this conversation, and, I there were so many people there at the,
Yeah.
presentation that
Great
was given, and
turnout.
it was a great turnout, and I felt like we were all kinda there, like, in unity because, again, like, there were a lot of interdisciplinary people there, right? Because it wasn't just professors, um, that do climate work, it was, like you said, Dr. Diaz, who also does dance and
Mhm.
all these different kinds of people, and so what would you say overall the response has been like from the campus community and
Yeah.
even people from Puerto Rico that
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
project is being done?
Um, well, I'd like to also preface that they have been working on this, like the climate justice for Puerto Rico now for a while. I want to say, like, from what I know, like 2 years ago they had a protest on campus,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and it
Were you
was
here for that?
wasn't at the protest, but I was like on campus for sure. And I think that it was led by Green UR, which is like a student led
Yeah.
organization here on campus.
Mhm.
And they were kind of asking the university to divest from AES, to divest from these companies that are kind of focusing on like fossil fuels and coal and oil. And unfortunately the university has not done that. And I think I think there's a specific community I feel that's like listening to these issues here on campus. Like, it's the people that are going to these events that are listening. But
Yeah.
the harder part, the I think the obstacle really is to get to those that are hesitant, or who don't really who are kind of ignorant to the issue, if I'm being honest, like who might not really care. So I feel like in terms of like responses, I think like the people that are listening, are very like adamant about change, like very vocal. Like, that's what I
Yeah.
really like about like our students, that like a lot of them are very like activists, sort of like,
Yeah, no, 100%.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I would say, well, I don't know about like in general because I know other campuses are way
yeah.
more student
Oh,
activists.
yeah.
I think here I mean, any kind of activism is good. I will say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I honestly wish there were more like events and things. I think that's one of the, like, I'm not gonna lie, like with a lot of the political climate and everything happening in Palestine, um, I just think that there could be so much more happening on campus. I think we're really quiet about a lot of these issues, but I'm still happy that we still, like, once in a while, like at least, like for me, it's like at least we have that. I wish there was more, but also you got to take into consideration that we're a minority. Like, this is a PWI, it's a PWI. Like, um, but in regards to like the how the Puerto Rican community is reacting, I think very grateful from the people we've talked to. We've gotten just a lot of like excitement and kind of gratefulness type of thing, and they've been very, very nice about it. I think people are just like happy that someone's paying attention. Anyone, really.
Yeah,
And that's and like rewarding enough for me, like to
yeah,
just be able to help.
of course. And again, we are in a privileged place right now, just being in the United States and being able to, get an education like the education we're getting here, to be more knowledgeable. And I do think part of our responsibility as students and also as people of color in this privileged position is to bring awareness to issues that normally we wouldn't hear about. Because I'm pretty sure I
Yeah.
never would have heard about the climate justice for Puerto Rico
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
about AES
Yeah.
had I not gone to school here or even gone to that event. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, really important to kind of find that like accessibility aspect to that. And so what moment from your project really stayed with you or moved you emotionally?
Ooh. I honestly, okay, this is so silly. Well, not silly, but when we went to Puerto Rico, one of the nights we did a moon ritual type of
Mm,
thing. Like,
what is that?
we I'm not all that spiritual, y'all, but basically I think it was like a summer solstice type of thing,
Mhm.
and everyone we went outside. We were part of our trip there was also like a conference clag, so like it was a geography conference, and it was like right after the event, our group specifically, we went outside, we like saw the moon, and we kind of just went around like saying affirmations and saying them like aloud to each other, and sort of just like enjoying our time there, like I think I remember it was like maybe Mariela who was burning incense around our bodies and I think, even though that doesn't necessarily how like isn't necessarily correlated to the work that we've been doing, it was like it's just a really nice bonding moment, I think,
Yeah, it sounds nice.
Yeah, yeah, like it was like we were working. Yeah, it's a lot of hard conversations, but again, like there's just so much that moves me because I don't have like the opportunity a lot to travel, but when I do, like this was just actually seeing what was happening, and the people, what they're going through. And a lot of people go to Puerto Rico to vacation, like a lot.
Yeah,
I saw a lot of students this summer, like, or even during break, like
yeah.
going to Puerto Rico, and it was like, you know what, yeah, like, but for us to go kind of from a different lens, we're not there to sit on the beach and have fun. It was like we're there to like to interview people, to collect data, to learn from community members, and there was like not a lot of time for, at least in my mind, it was really hard to relax and feel like I had no, I don't know, like blood on my hands or something. I just felt a little vulnerable there because it was like there was so much going on, and honestly, like we stayed relatively close to like the San Juan area, so
Yeah.
you learn that a lot of people there, like I remember I went out with my fellow uh classmate, Izzy, and we um she was recording and I was going around asking people about like Puerto Rico, like if they live there type of thing, or if they're visiting. And you'd be surprised, a lot of the people that were there were tourists or vacationing, or they're like, I've lived here but for some time, because that's another issue, like the fact that people are kind of coming in and buying out these houses and turning like schools to Airbnbs
Mm,
and all these things, that a lot of Americans are moving to Puerto
yeah.
Rico, and it's like they're displacing communities, truly. And yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's so I mean, this is happening in Puerto Rico, it's happening in Mexico,
Yep.
it's happening in Ecuador. I met somebody not too long ago who had told me that they were planning on like retiring in Ecuador and they had no
Ah,
cultural ties or
wow.
um relatives that lived there. And I've heard a lot of people talk about like their mom or dad living in Mexico and they're white.
Yep.
Um and I'm not Mexican, I'm Ecuadorian,
Hmm.
but I remember like thinking a little, okay, like that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because like right now in Puerto Rico, the economy is changing because there's so many people moving there. So things are getting very
Yep.
expensive. And again, like they're buying these houses, they're essentially pushing people out.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, it's normalized now. People are kind of like, yeah, move to Puerto
It's
Rico
crazy.
and get your tax break, whatever. But there are people that live there that call that home. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously you've learned so much, you've witnessed so much, you've
Hmm.
traveled. How has this experience shaped your thinking about activism?
Wow. oh, that it is not an easy thing, you know? I mean, even prior to college, I haven't had any experiences, but I knew where my morals lied. Like I've always kind of known,
Yeah.
you know, um, and kind of going on this trip especially, and or even throughout the whole summer researching about these issues. Um, I was like, yeah, yeah, like this is awesome. Like I'm gonna do this, but you don't realize just how many like setbacks there are to the work that you want to do. You know, like we're talking so much about politics and talking about like what's going on right now, and everything just feels like there's nothing that I can do. Like I just feel like two steps forward, four steps back, and I think that sort of those challenges have helped me be like, yeah, this, you know, calling yourself an activist isn't an easy thing. It's not just reposting something on Instagram and
Yeah.
being like my work is done. It's like you have to do something about it, right? Like you don't necessarily have to be on the front lines, you don't have to be
Yeah.
with the communities especially, but I think like you have to educate yourself as much as you can, and I think like education that's continuous, like you're never gonna know enough. I feel like you're always gonna be learning something new, and I
Yeah.
think just kind of always in that mindset of like inequalities, like all these things are happening, it can be draining, but I think learning how to balance out like the difficulties with the rewarding side of things is something that I've like learned about activism for sure.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And like you said, activism takes many different forms, but
Yeah.
it's not just simply reposting something. You
Exactly.
need to be able to see some type of tangible difference when you do activism in order to bring change.
Yeah.
Because, at the end of the day, I would say that majority of people don't have that big of a platform unless like you're a celebrity. And so if you're already with people that kind of think the same as you and have the same beliefs, you reposting it is not
Yeah.
reaching the audience that it should.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, looking forward, what do you hope is one thing people take away from this project?
Oh. I would say to be aware of the university at the end of the day, coming back to UR, and like, you know, you can love your school, you can have this school pride, but question it a little bit.
Yeah.
Question sort of the what goes into the funding, like who's providing to the endowment, and seek new information from the people that often don't have the platform, you
Yeah.
know. Find that, you know, there's always people talking about these issues, you know, even if it's not mainstream, like people are out there struggling, and they're wanting to be heard, and I think like
Yeah.
you can always like listen. I feel like that's the least that we can do.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and
Mhm.
I think like you said, questioning the institution. And I think sometimes there's a misperception that if you protest on a university or if you protest like in general, it's because you hate the institution
Right.
or you hate the country. But I
Mhm.
think it's larger than that. I think it's
Yeah.
like having so much love for
Yeah.
the institution, having so much love for, the country, that you want it to be the best that it can be.
Yeah.
And so, protesting isn't a sign of hate. It's, if anything, it's a sign of love,
Yeah.
because you just want things to be like the best that it can be for
Yeah.
everyone.
Totally.
um and so, what's your next step? I mean, you're a senior, so I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, you know, this actually is interesting because I was talking to Mariela about this earlier, but you know, I'm looking at jobs now, and a lot of these sort of like technical jobs, um, you have to work for corporations, or like if not, you know, personally, if I could have it my way, I'd be doing research and learning more about communities that need help type
Mhm.
of thing. But that's right now it's just so hard because it's like you also want to make money, you also want to like
Yeah.
provide for your family, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard out here for low income like women of color especially, and um I think that's something that I'm grappling with right now,
Yeah.
but
It's a big opportunity cost.
yeah, but you know, where do I like leave my morals and push for my success, but then like what is success?
It's hard to navigate that.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a dilemma that a lot of people are trying to maneuver, because if you come from a wealthy family, you have that financial security, you can do whatever you want. But again, like, people have generational wealth, and it's hard navigating your morals while also saying, I also want to build generational wealth. So,
Right.
yeah, I totally get it. Um, and so, what advice would you give to other students that may want to organize about
Oh,
climate
yeah.
justice?
Yeah. Um, First and foremost, that you're not alone, and kind of this like climate panic. I think a lot of us are feeling that way. For a while, I kind of would like bury myself into my bed and be like, there's nothing I'm ever gonna be able to do. We are screwed. But also knowing that like there's not much that you can do in the sense of like a lot of this is done by big corporations that you have no control in that whatsoever. So I don't think you shouldn't be feeling any of that guilt. But start normalizing these conversations
Hmm.
within your friend groups, within your close circles of like,
Yeah,
within your families. I think a lot of times it might be hard, especially if you come from like immigrant parents who might not want to listen to that sort of thing. And they're like not so focused on like justice and maybe more like,
survival.
yes, literally just surviving. And that's hard, that's challenging. But I think slowly incorporating that into your conversations at least, and know that anything truly, like, not to be corny, but anything is possible, like,
No, it's true. Anything is
right?
possible. Yeah. You just have to believe in yourself and lean
Exactly.
on your community, lean on your friends. Yeah, no, you definitely got to believe in yourself. I think,
Yeah,
just doing this, you kind of just have to,
you really
you have to just
do.
do it. Literally just
Yes.
do it. Awesome. And so I want to thank you again for coming
Of
on.
course,
I just
thank
have one
you.
final
Of
question.
course.
So if you can go back in time at
Mhm.
any point in history, where would you go and why?
Whoa.
You couldn't change the future,
I couldn't change the future, but I
just
can
as
go
an
back in
observer.
time. Observe. I think I would go back to prime colonization.
Hmm.
I learning a lot, especially in my social classes, about the way that colonizers would describe the
Hmm.
indigenous communities, the
Yeah.
people that like lived on this soil first, and sort of just how that led into like a ripple effect of white dominance. I think that would, to me, that is just so like fascinating in the sense of, wow, like that happened in history, and now we are where we are now, I think. Or or I probably would go back to when my mom was a little girl, because I'd want to just see.
Hmm.
I love my mom to death, and
Hmm.
I like, she sorry, so many things roaming through my head, but she came to this country when I was well, when she was 19, and
Wow.
with me in her arms type of thing. And
Wow.
that she went through a lot, so I feel like I would want to like go back to those moments when she felt truly alone, but
Hmm.
she struggled a lot, and she's just such a powerful woman. She's so strong,
Yeah.
and I'm always just so interested in all of these topics of like inequalities, especially like seeing it like within my family and what they've experienced. And yeah, so I think, yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. No, thank you for your answer. And I love that,
Yeah.
your mom, I'm sure went through a lot, and you're trying to serve your community as best as you can,
Yeah.
and you're really doing your best. And just even having a college degree and being somebody that's a person of color with a degree to hopefully inspire other people like us, or other people that don't know about university to go to college
Yeah.
or do whatever they feel is best for themselves. So yeah, you're doing a lot, and I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys. I'm really happy that
Yay.
we got to have this conversation.
Yes.
A lot going on right now, in terms of just the entire country is undergoing a huge transformation, and it's really important to not remember our forefront issues and to make sure that these conversations are still being had. So thank you again, Rosie. I
Oh,
really
thank you,
appreciate
Isabel.
it.
Oh,
And I hope you guys all stay tuned for next episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.